Play cut 52 of Jen O'Malley Dillon.
On the Biden question, we of course got that everywhere we went. And we knew what the data was. We knew we had to show her as her own person and point to the future and not try to rehash the past. She also felt that she was part of the administration. And unless we said something like, well, I would have handled the border completely differently, we were never going to satisfy anybody. We were trying to tell a story and give the impression that she was different without pointing to a specific issue.
Can I ask this, why not a specific issue? Is it something she was unwilling to do? I mean, you worried it would feel disingenuous?
She felt like she was part of the administration, so why should she look back and cherry pick some things that she would have done differently when she was part of it? She had tremendous loyalty to President Biden.
But they, from the beginning, they were, week to week, all, one super PAC would take a couple weeks and hit Pennsylvania, and then the next one would come in and do the same, and they were all coordinated. We didn't have the benefit of that.
The vice president was thinking about going on Joe Rogan's show. And a lot of the younger progressive staffers pitched a hissy fit. Supposedly the campaign said that wasn't the term of fact, but they did. When you put a campaign together and you hire young people to do work, let me tell you exactly what you tell these people, what I would tell them. Not only am I not interested in your opinion, I'm not even going to call you by your name. You're 23 years old. I don't really give a what you think.
Why did you find this conversation so illuminating?
These are people who all come from Obama world. So even though Obama was a very talented candidate and won national elections, underneath Obama the whole time, the Democratic Party was crumbling. They lost governorships and state houses, and it was really a party in complete disaster, just kind of with the stench, covered up by the shine of Obama. And these people came away from that thinking that they were the greatest geniuses in all of politics, and they were the ones who exercised the most influence over Kamala's campaign. The purpose of this episode was to convene the geniuses who ran Kamala's campaign and try and ask them honestly, hey, what happened? You just raised $1 billion, infinitely more than Trump, far more than any other candidate, and you got your kicked up and down every one of the swing states. You've lost major margins in the most blue states like New York and California and New Jersey, and you even lost the popular vote. So you would expect there to be at least some symbolic or feigned acknowledgement of error. Here are things we probably did wrong. Here are reasons why the electorate has rejected. There was none of that. It was all, we did the best campaign we could possibly have run under the limited circumstances. There was a lot of implication that it was the voters' fault. There was a lot of suggestions that just the structural conditions of the economy and Biden's unpopularity made it impossible to win. And the whole time I'm thinking, whose fault is it that your candidate ended up being imposed on the public with no primary vote, no mini election within your party, someone who had been long considered to be one of the least politically talented people on the planet? They were acting like these were externalities over which they had no control when they were the ones who did it. And how do you, Charlie, as somebody at the top of your profession, making millions of dollars, which they do off these campaigns, walk away from one of the most devastating defeats in a long time to Donald Trump, someone they consider a Hitlerian figure and a white supremacist, and not have an iota of self-reflection or self-doubt about what they might have done to contribute to that loss? But that's exactly what it was, 90 minutes.
So you would imagine that the Democrat campaign mafia would have some sort of introspection about how they lost. Well, they're on a PR damage tour right now. Jen O'Malley Dillon and David Plouffe are doing the rounds. This is Miss Jen on Pod Save America, trying to explain away how and why Kamala Harris lost. We were just talking about humility. Maybe they could use a little bit of that. Play cut 52 of Jen O'Malley Dillon.
On the Biden question, we of course got that everywhere we went. And we knew what the data was. We knew we had to show her as her own person and point to the future and not try to rehash the past. She also felt that she was part of the administration. And unless we said something like, well, I would have handled the border completely differently, We were never going to satisfy anybody. We were trying to tell a story and give the impression that she was different without pointing to a specific issue.
Can I ask this why not a specific issue? Is it something she was unwilling to do? You worried it would feel disingenuous?
She felt like she was part of the administration, so why should she look back and cherry pick some things that she would have done differently when she was part of it? She had tremendous loyalty to President Biden.
Cherry pick things you wouldn't. Oh, this is just delicious. Let's keep going. Play cut 54.
And he had an army of super PACs that were so coordinated. I'm sure there's some legal way they were coordinated, but like
I'm sure it was legal.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Or illegal.
Yes.
But they, from the beginning, they were, week to week, all, one super PAC would take a couple weeks and hit Pennsylvania, and then the next one would come in and do the same, and they were all coordinated. We didn't have the benefit of that.
Wait, hold on. Wait, time out. What happened to all your outside money? Not only did you guys have $1.5 billion in hard money, what happened to the multiple $1 billion outside? And shame on you, Jen O'Malley Dillon, even suggesting we do something illegal. What exactly illegal would we have been doing? That you're legally allowed to coordinate activity with campaigns now, according to the Mark Elias FEC ruling? You guys are so smug, you guys are so self-righteous that you can't actually acknowledge that we out-organized you. You were leaking to the press, oh, Turning Point doesn't know what they're doing. No, we chased more ballots than you. We registered more voters than you. Can I play that again? I'm sorry, that's as good as it gets. I got to play that again just for my own personal delight. She's saying, oh, wow, next thing you know, one super PAC comes into Pennsylvania. One comes into North Carolina. Yeah, that's right. We came in and we out-organized you. The ragtag rebels of Turning Point that were made fun of and smeared and slandered by everyone in the media. We went up against all the outside groups on the left. Where did all those outside groups go exactly? All these national action networks and BLM and local community groups and the C3s and the C4s and the super PACs. Let's play that again. Play cut 54.
And he had an army of super PACs that were so coordinated. I'm sure there's some legal way they were coordinated, but like
I'm sure it was legal.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Or illegal.
Yes.
But they, from the beginning, they were, week to week, all, one super PAC would take a couple weeks and hit Pennsylvania, and then the next one would come in and do the same, and they were all coordinated. We didn't have the benefit of that.
Man, she's just acknowledging that. Turning Point beat her. Elon Musk beat her. We out-organized the organizers. It's just such a lie, by the way. They have nothing but outside groups. They have like 600 outside groups. Maybe the unions didn't actually want to go work for you, Jen O'Malley Dillon. It seems as if the Democrat Party, who seems they're always they claim to be on the cutting edge of culture, have just come to realize that more Americans are getting news from social media and podcasting. I mean, it's hard for me to believe they were this naive, but walk me through how they got to a place where they have lost such significant ground in digital content creation and podcasting.
I mean, you're in independent media. I've been in independent media ever since I left the media outlet I founded when it wouldn't let me publish negative reporting about Joe Biden before the 2020 election. Any of us could see this coming. The data has been so clear. Their ratings have been in collapse and free fall. Every poll shows that Americans trust and like corporate media almost less than like pedophiles and syphilis. And so the trends have been clear for so long. But when your entire self-identity, your entire self-esteem depends upon the position and the prestige that you think it brings with inside of a collapsing institution, you're always going to be the last people to believe that the institution is collapsing. I think the most traumatizing part of this election for them was, again, not just that Trump won, but that so many non-white voters, the people who they think they're the benevolent leaders of, who they think they own, who they think they have the right to have eternal support, migrated in huge numbers away from their candidate to Donald Trump, despite constantly saying Trump was a Nazi, was going to put them in camps. Remember, the whole last week of the convention was the media claiming that Trump had a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden.
Yes,
they were convinced
correct.
Tony Hinchcliffe's joke was going to swing the election because Puerto Ricans would rise up with Latinos led by Jennifer Lopez and Big Bunny or Bad Bunny or whoever. And none of that happened. And so when you think that you speak and are so foreign, so connected to a group of people who turn around and show that they don't see the world remotely the way you see it, they don't care what you see, they don't listen to what you see, this is almost too much for even them to be in denial any longer. And that's why you see all these, oh my God, how are we going to create our own Joe Rogan?
Yeah, but is there something to the format where leftists, not liberals, struggle in long-form podcasting? They struggle in unscripted environments. Is there something to the new left? And I don't mean traditional liberal values. I mean one that has a primary focus on censorship and war and regime politics that stays away from that sort of inquiry towards truth or long-form dialogue. Is it the format that also doesn't fit their politics?
I definitely see what you mean. At the same time, as somebody who has long been associated with the left, who was kind of steeped in a civil libertarianism with which the left was once most associated, you see a lot of the right-wing movements, at least as shaped and led by Donald Trump, having commandeered a lot of these issues quite successfully. The only people who talk anymore about free speech versus censorship
of course, you're
are
right.
on the right. The only people who talk anymore about the evils of the CIA and the FBI and the U.S. security state are people on the right, not the left. Same with the war machine. I don't think it's so much the topics. I think it's the fact that there's so much forced orthodoxy within liberal left discourse that people just can't speak freely. They're constantly afraid of their own shadows. You saw that with Kamala Harris. You see that with left-wing media in general. So people sense that. If you're not someone speaking freely, if you're petrified of saying the wrong word, you seem inauthentic. And it's not a faction that anyone wants to be a part of that's so repressed and petrified. And Trump came along and, blew through every single taboo and limit without the slightest concern, the slightest apology. And that opened up so much space on the right. And I think that's what made it so much more powerful, so much more able to connect with the ordinary people that the left had a claim on for so long.
And when I mean the new left, I don't mean traditional liberal values. I mean totalitarian impulses and, international warmongering, values that you and I don't hold. What I'm curious, though, is what will their next move be? Do you see the Democrat Party liberalizing itself towards one and re-embracing of free speech, dialogue, expression, agree to disagree, kind of the promise of the Bill of Rights? Or is there going to be the even further rise of this kind of woke wing? I know I'm asking you to speculate and predict, but as a reporter, I'm sure you've thought deeply about this. What is next for the current composition of the American Democrat Party?
I don't think that's hard. I don't think it's that hard to predict. And I also don't think that this distinction that you're drawing that has always been valid between kind of establishment liberalism and the left is really that wide anymore, or even that real. The left of the 1960s protesting against the Vietnam War and the establishment was always a little different than Lyndon Johnson and that whole gang that pursued the Vietnam War. Those distinctions have eroded in favor of this idea that you cannot trust ordinary people. You can trust elites with expertise, but you can't trust ordinary people. And this whole industry that was concocted out of nowhere, creating a fake credential of people being disinformation agents, that was all reaction, first of all, to the UK approval of Brexit, but way more so the big trauma for liberals of Donald Trump beating Hillary Clinton in 2016. And they concluded from that, the only hope they have to continue to control people and their thoughts is to create systems to further control, censor, and manipulate public opinion through the internet more. And I think with this crushing defeat and them being at such a loss in the wilderness to figure out how to get back, they're going to resort to increasingly authoritarian tactics that they already believe in and just kind of double and triple down on them, not just as American liberals, but with the Western left that very much believes in this also.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction, is that if this current government they might not have control of, but they still control a lot of states, and almost all of Europe has embraced this new orthodoxy. It's very dangerous and pernicious.
All right, so let's check out the second video.
Glenn, your journalism has been terrific over the years, and your commentary as well. I want to get into this Pod Save America story because I think it's hilarious and delicious. But I want to get you on the show here. Just your reaction and takeaway. First of President Trump's triumph. The intel agencies were against him. The apparatus of the government and the regime was against him. And the American people spoke. Kind of what is your initial takeaway 3 weeks now removed from President Trump's comeback victory?
I thought the most important and beneficial outcome of the 2016 election when Trump won was that it had so severely undermined the leading institutions of authority, which up until that point had seemed almost invulnerable. These were the people who controlled the flow of information, who dictated public opinion without much dissent, who controlled the policy and ideology that governed Washington, regardless of the outcome of election. It was that DC bipartisan consensus. And Trump's victory shattered so much of their sense of invulnerability because they were all united against him. They were all guaranteeing everybody that he was going to lose. He was completely anathema to the sort of person that they expected would and all had been and would always be entering the presidency. But I think there was almost a subconscious level, even though it damaged them, on which they wrote it off as an aberration. 2020, despite all the challenges in the world that every incumbent globally faced because of COVID, he almost won again. And then I think this time they really devoted themselves. They tripled and quadrupled their effort in so many different ways, calling him Hitler and a fascist and a white supremacist, all the way up until the day of the election, only to realize, and I think this is the most traumatic part for them, not just that he won, but that so many of the groups that they believe they own, lock, stock, and barrel, who have an entitlement to obey them, migrated in huge numbers away from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to the person that they've been saying is a white supremacist, black voters, Latino voters, non-white voters. And I think they're finally now starting to internalize that nobody listens to them. Nobody trusts them any longer. They have zero influence beyond the people who already agree with them, that this kind of power over information has been decentralized because deservedly they've lost trust because of how often they lie. And Trump has been more than anything else. There's a lot of things he's been, but he's been a disruptor of status quo institutional authority. And I don't think there's anyone who could do anything other than celebrate that.
Without a doubt. So that kind of is a nice segue to the Pod Save America conversation. For people that don't know, Pod Save America is like regime-approved, sarcastic political chatter on the left, right? It is one of the top podcasts on the planet. It's all the former Obama bros. They got all the guests. They think they know so much. They had Jen O'Malley Dillon on the program, who was kind of walking through how things happen. I want to play some tape, but first, Glenn, just set the table for the audience. Why did you find this conversation so illuminating?
I was just joking with your producer that in a million years, I honestly never thought I would ever be able to sit through an hour and a half of a Pod Save America episode. And yet I proved myself wrong because I could not take my eyes off of it. These are people who all come from Obama world. So even though Obama was a very talented candidate and won national elections, underneath Obama the whole time, the Democratic Party was crumbling. They lost governorships and state houses, and it was really a party in complete disaster, just kind of with the stench, covered up by the shine of Obama. And these people came away from that thinking that they were the greatest geniuses in all of politics, and they were the ones who exercised the most influence over Kamala's campaign. The purpose of this episode was to convene the geniuses who ran Kamala's campaign and try and ask them honestly, hey, what happened? You just raised $1 billion, infinitely more than Trump, far more than any other candidate, and you got your kicked up and down every one of the swing states. You've lost major margins in the most blue states like New York and California and New Jersey, and you even lost the popular vote. So that you would expect there to be at least some symbolic or feigned acknowledgement of error. Here are things we probably did wrong. Here are reasons why the electorate has rejected. There was none of that. It was all, we did the best campaign we could possibly have run under the limited circumstances. There was a lot of implication that it was the voters' fault. There was a lot of suggestions that just the structural conditions of the economy and Biden's unpopularity made it impossible to win. And the whole time I'm thinking, whose fault is it that your candidate ended up being imposed on the public with no primary vote, no mini election within your party, someone who had been long considered to be one of the least politically talented people on the planet? They were acting like these were externalities over which they had no control when they were the ones who did it. And how do you, Charlie, as somebody at the top of your profession, making millions of dollars, which they do off these campaigns, walk away from one of the most devastating defeats in a long time to Donald Trump, someone they consider a Hitlerian figure and a white supremacist, and not have an iota of self-reflection or self-doubt about what they might have done to contribute to that loss, but that's exactly what it was. 90 minutes, not just of refusing to admit error, but congratulating themselves. Oh, we ran a spectacular campaign under the limitations. No one knew who she was. We really made people excited about her. We lost with less margin in the swing states than we did in the other states, which proved that some of our work actually had, I mean, I almost want to watch it again because of just how simultaneously mind-boggling it is, but also how revealing it is about how this rotted political class thinks.
I want to play James Carville's reaction to Kamala's staffers here. Play cut 57.
The vice president was thinking about going on Joe Rogan's show, and a lot of the younger progressive staffers pitched a hissy fit. Supposedly the campaign said that that wasn't the term de facto, but they did. When you put a campaign together and you hire young people to do work, let me tell you exactly what you tell these people, what I would tell them. Not only am I not interested in your opinion, I'm not even going to call you by your name. You're 23 years old. I don't really give a what you think.
What James Carville is getting at is that they were unwilling to even go sit down with Joe Rogan. You've been on Rogan many times, Glenn. And the whole joke, they're like, well, how do we get a new Rogan? Well, you guys used to have Rogan. Glenn.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, just let's recall when we're talking about James Carville that he wrote article after article, including in the New York Times, saying that not only did he believe Kamala was going to win the election, but he didn't think it was going to be close, that he had no doubts about it, that he had absolute certainty about it. And maybe that was just some activism, but that is what he said repeatedly. And he turned out to be just as wrong as anybody else. Maybe he should be listening to people a little bit more. But I think one of the things that's so funny that people have forgotten is that for all this talk about how the left needs Joe Rogan, as you said, the left had a Joe Rogan whose name was Joe Rogan just in 2022, not 2 decades ago, 4 years ago. Joe Rogan said his favorite candidate was Bernie Sanders and his second favorite candidate was Tulsi Gabbard. So Joe Rogan endorsed the most left-wing socialist candidate who's viable for the presidency in decades, this far-right, radicalizing into fascism, voice for young men, 4 years ago was on board with Bernie Sanders. And one of the things that happened was when the Sanders campaign did what, of course, they should have done, which was touted Joe Rogan's endorsement in their advertisements because those were the voters they need to attract. They needed to undermine this view that only far leftists supported Bernie Sanders. People in the party led by AOC were so offended that the Sanders campaign would even speak with, let alone tout the endorsement of Joe Rogan, that AOC for months refused to have anything to do with the Sanders campaign. She stopped campaigning with them. She accused them of promoting transphobia. And so when you have someone like Joe Rogan, who has so many classically left-wing positions, he's probably the loudest, most prominent advocate of same-sex marriage. People go on his show and say, we need traditional marriage. He'll pound them for hours about why that's wrong. So many different views like that. He's anti-corporatist, he's anti-war. To take somebody like that and just malign them and attack them and exclude them and say, because there's a couple of positions, we're going to declare you far right, that's why they alienate everybody.
Oh, I see. That's a very interesting one, listening to Glenn and then also Charlie Kirk making analysis or exposure about what Kamala Harris' team did. But then, nevertheless, just like how Kamala do have this famous saying that what can be unbothered by what has been. Of course, whatever they must have done, you understand, in the past, of course, we are just focusing on the future. One thing is for sure, the Democrat undermines the conservative, the Republican Party, and I think that they made their analogy based on the $1.5 billion they were able to raise for the campaign funds, even though at the end of the day they end up, you understand, having a lot of debt. It's only God that knows how much they actually use, you understand, for that very election. And then that is the reason why you see they come up with all these strategy, talking about Turning Point USA, all this team led by Charlie Kirk, of course. They couldn't believe that the conservative can come up, you understand, with a program like this to be able to outclass President Joe Biden. And then one thing is, I think that they tend to undermine the power of the social media, because when you look at it, when Charlie Kirk was just having his programs in campuses, speaking to young voters, engaging these people in debate, selling the policy of the Republican to them, and then making them see reasons why there is a need for them to vote President Donald J. Trump. And then not just about you voting President Donald J. Trump, but you seeing that America, you understand, the system was collapsing, and then there is a need, you understand, for people to come together in order to rescue the system. This is what, you understand, Charlie Kirk was just selling, you understand, to the student. And then some of them, you understand, we are actually seeing reasons, and most of them you're seeing reasons with Charlie Kirk of what he was saying. And then that is the reason why you see when Tulsi Gabbard, in a sense, saw what Charlie, in a sense, she was very impressed, and that contributes for her to end up what joining the Republican. And not just about her, you understand, joining them, you understand, in secret, but of course, you could see her, you understand, in campuses with Charlie Kirk, you understand, you see them debating, you understand, the student explaining, you understand, the policy of the Republican to the American people, for them to understand that Trump presidency, you understand, was for the interest of the America. It was just to restore back, you understand, the past glory. And then you could see people like what Vivek Ramaswamy, of course, they all jailed Charlie, you understand. And then we could talk about Rob, of course. Those are people, you understand, they were, you understand, Democrat. But when they saw, you understand, the need that what Charlie, you understand, was doing with this movement, with this student, with this college, you understand, students, they felt that, oh, there is a need for them to, you understand, to join this movement. And no wonder President Donald J. Trump ended up considering some of them, you understand, into the political offices. And then that's why I see Tulsi was appointed. We talk about, understand, VV, we won't talk about Elon Musk and the rest of them. Why? Because of what they saw the need, that what they need to rescue the system. Just like how you see Glenn kept talking that all this system was actually collapsing, in a sense, since the time of President Obama, even though he was very intelligent. But then when you look at it and critically, you got to realize that what it was true. And then these people, they just depend on their 1.5 billion. They just feel that because they have the fund, of course, then it will be enough, you know, to be able to convince the people, and Kamala will win it. But then, Charlie, I think that we need to give credit to the people that advise President Joe Biden to go on a debate with President Donald J. Trump. Because the truth about it is, if that debate was not held, of course, we could have not listened to Joe Biden. At that point in time, nobody could have even pressured him for him to say that what he should resign for Kamala to take over as the Democrat, understand, candidate in the election. So they tend to make it, understand, easier for us. So I would say that we need to give credit, understand, to the people that convinced him to go on that debate. Because if he could have not gone to that debate, he could have not been exposed, and we could have not understand some of the things or evil things the Democrat were just planning. So Charlie, I think that we need to give those people, understand. I know that they were Democrat, but they didn't know that they just lead themselves, understand, to destruction. And then it just makes everything, understand, easier. And then some of them just feels like, okay, since it's Kamala, all right, then it will be easier. But then at the end of the day, America would won. And then all that, understand, we could be waiting for is for January to come, for them to hand over, so that Trump can start implementing some of the policy that he has already been doing with the transition team. Of course, we have seen a couple of the people that Trump have in his team, and then we believe that things will be restored back again, and America will work for everyone. I know that a lot of you have thought an opinion, and I wanted to drop it at the comment section, and may God bless you as you do so. So this is the end of my video. If you like my reaction, you should like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any video you want me to react to, don't forget to drop it at the comment section, and I'm going to check it out. So you remain blessed, and I see you in my next video. Goodbye.